This is what we call in the business a boomerang. This one was here April 1st for repair, and now it's July the 8th, and it's broken again. But now it's mine because they bought a new one. Let's see what went wrong with it. I saw this Integra receiver, I guess about 3 months ago. I think it was like April, either April or May. Anyway, it's once again shutting down, so on its way to recycling. I figured I would pop the top off and see why it's shutting down before it heads off to recycling. So the last time this one was in, it had a fault on the connections cracked on the driver board. So that's immediately where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to the driver board and just take a look at that and see whether there's anything else that's gone bad on here, and whether this one can be resurrected. Let's just say this one's mine now because the person that owned it has now replaced it, as they've lost faith in it because it broke down a second time. But let's just take a look at the board and see if there's any more fractured connections due to heat. Of course, the number one enemy to all electronics is heat. You can tell this board's been hot just from the discoloration. This is what color the circuit board material originally was, as you can see around the edges. But you can see how dark it is everywhere else. Heat is certainly a problem from these hot driver transistors, and I bet you there's more connections that have gone bad on some of the other channels. So I'm just going to go over this board again, and we'll just redo some more of the connections on here and see whether that will make this thing operational just for the hell of it. So the channel I worked on before is the right channel. This is the one that had DC output on it. I'm going to take a close look at some of the other ones here and just see whether others are also going bad. The real problem here is lead-free solder. See if I wiggle the transistor on top, you'll see the beads move a bit. So it's lead-free solder is the big problem. I'm just going to go through and I'm going to redo all the connections, everything that looks like it could be a little bit off. I'm going to just resolder them, and then we'll plug the board back in and see whether it has any improvement, whether it still goes into protection. The big problem here is just lead-free solder. It's just crap. So what happens is a connection will fail, and it'll throw the bias or the balance off on the amplifier itself, and then you'll end up with a slight DC voltage. So then it goes into protection and shuts down. But other than components that have failed, it's the number one cause. In fact, it's probably even more common than components. Components themselves are fairly reliable on equipment like this, with the exception of DSP chips on a number of Onkyo's junk. DSP chips were failing left, right, and center. But other than that, it's heat. And it's the heating, cooling, the constant heating, cooling. With this crappy solder, it really causes the connections to crack. You can see a few of them here that just don't look great. So I'm going to go through and just redo all the ones that look like they are problematic, and then we'll plug the board back in and try it again and see if it goes into protection. I say this is just the last stop before this goes to recycling, and if I get it to run great, I'll give it to somebody else. I won't be hanging on to it myself. I don't have a need for it. I don't have room for all this equipment. So I've once again gone over the connections, not so much the ones I did before, they're fine, but I did the other ones. On the other channels I've gone over all the driver transistors. And that's it. We'll plug this back in. See if it still goes into protection mode. As you can see from the heat on the board, the board's actually kind of a bit warped. These are not really a great layout because the heat's all concentrated. They got the hottest parts. They don't even have heat sinks on them here, right? These transistors get real hot and they just heat the entire board up. And you know the saying, right? Heat is the #1 enemy of electronics. The board snaps in place. A couple screws hold the board down, and then the clip on this other side, which I think I probably should have put that in place first, but I should be able to snap it in here. There we go. Okay, we'll plug it in again, see if it still runs into protection. If it goes into protection, then something a little more serious, and I don't know if I'm going to go any further than this, but let's just see whether the unit will go into protection mode now. Watch my dim bulb. If I hold the board forward, let go of the board, it starts to immediately go into kind of a shutdown mode. Right, if I just do this, it'll come on. Now it's on. Okay, yeah, this is still a connection on here. If I let go of the board, it shuts off. If I pull the board back like this, it turns on. And you hear the relay kick in. There, the relay just kicked in. Turn it off. See, now it's staying on. It wasn't seated properly. The board wasn't pushed in properly. Now it's on. You hear the relays click in. Hit the power button off. Hit the power button on. The relays all click in. So it should be sound. I'll hook this up to speakers. There should be sound on it now. Just connections. Just connections. That's the big problem with these pieces of crap. Is the connections go bad between the main board and the sub board. They work their way loose, and even the plugs themselves can cause problems. I bet you if I wiggle this thing, it will shut down. Let me just touch this board here and just give it a bit of a push. Will it shut down? Oh, it's on. Okay, good. I guess it's seated properly now. I just didn't have it seated properly the first time I put it on. It seems to be seated okay now. Excellent. Okay. Not shutting down. Off. On. And we should hear the relay kick. There we go, relay kicked in. Hook up some speakers and see what it does. Okay. I got speakers connected now. We'll turn the volume down to minimum. And tuner. Alright, antenna's connected. That's working. So, more connections. I would imagine that probably more will go bad in this thing going down the road just because it's such a piss poor design. All that heat that comes up on that board, it's just going to heat things up and continue to cook the connections as I say, I saw this a couple months back and fixed the problem on that it had, but it developed another problem. It was installed in a cabinet and has since been replaced with a Yamaha system. So it's mine now. So it's got the remote and everything for it. I'll probably turn around and find someone to buy this one. It's got the dual zones and everything on it. Anyway, it's back up and running. Thanks for watching.